What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're looking at the best opening fixtures for our FPL teams. Not only that, which teams have got the best fixtures, but obviously a discussion around which players we should be picking, if any, because some teams have got good fixtures, but it's hard to know exactly which players to pick. So we're going to be discussing all that in today's video. If you enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. And also, do not forget to check out Fantasy Football Scout, right? There's a link in the description below. It's a website I've been using pretty much since I started FPL, so 10 to 11 years ago now. Loads of great stats and loads of great tools in the members area. There's still, at the time of recording, 20% off, so you can pay monthly or yearly. I think that's running until at least through July, but obviously you want to get in as quickly as possible to make use of all the tools before the season, and obviously you can continue using them during it as well. So one thing, for example, I've done in today's video is I've got a bunch of stats for expected goal involvement, which you can get from here. So you've got defenders, midfielders, forwards, etc. Loads of tabs. If you want to look at who's good for bonus points, expected points, you can filter it all here, and obviously you can check out a bunch of players that you're thinking about as well that I might not even mention in today's video. You can just peruse this at your will once you're signed up, right? And obviously if you do want to look at fixtures and stuff, you've got the season ticker as well, so all the tools are on the left hand side, and you can filter it by attack, by defense. You can increase the number of game weeks. If you want someone for like the first 10 game weeks, you can look at who's got the best fixtures overall, attack or defense, etc. And just, I mean, there's so much stuff I can't even go through it, but one of the things I really like is creating my own tables. So if I want to go and see who's a good attacking defender, I've got my attacking defenders table, so I've set that up so it only shows me attackers, it doesn't show me defenders, and then I can sort it by expecting goal involvement for last season, shots in the box, whatever I want to look at, it's all there. And obviously through the season, like once we start, you'll be able to drop down this box and do like last 4 game weeks, last 6 game weeks as you get through the season. So if you haven't checked it out, link in the description below. Get signed up while it's 20% off. It's so cheap anyway. You can have it for the whole year, or you can pay monthly instead. Okay, so Liverpool's opening fixtures are essentially why I do not care about any kind of template, right? The thing with FPL, because of the scoring system, because there isn't points for defensive midfielders, points for tackles, interceptions and stuff like that, the player pool is essentially a bit smaller than other fantasy games, right? So already we're playing from a smaller pool. Loads of people have got all the info about the players. We all know how good Liverpool are, right? So when they get a set of fixtures where their most difficult game is Chelsea, Leeds arguably isn't that easy, but again, they put a fair few goals past them last year. Whether or not Leeds will be massively defensively tighter this year is still yet to be seen, I would say. So you can even put that as a green fixture, then it's 5 out of 6. Those fixtures are great. So of course, everybody is looking at Liverpool players, and rightly so, and we probably don't even need to spend that long talking about it, but this is why I don't care about a template. If Salah and Trent are owned by every single FPL manager in the world, I would still have him in my team. Let's quickly talk about Salah, right? I'm going to say it right now. Salah, to me, is essential. Now, if we use the literal term essential, right, everyone's going to say nobody's essential, you can do well without certain players, and I fully agree, right? There was a time last year, I think, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I think Bruno Fernandes, who was the top scoring player, I think, last year, I didn't have him from like game week 27 to 38, and I didn't have him at the start of the season either, up until maybe game week 8 or 9 or something like that, and I still did really well. So you can do well without certain players as long as everything goes right for you. I would see essential as, in this sense, where you need a damn good reason why you're not putting them in your team. Like a really good reason. And for me, there's no good reason why Salah shouldn't be in our teams if he's fit. So he's essential. I'll leave it there. The biggest question for me is how many more Liverpool players do you put in? Ideally with those fixtures, right? If any team had those fixtures, I'd probably be looking at putting 2 or 3 in. But when it's one of the best teams in the league, I want to get 3. So straight away, I'm putting Trent Alexander-Arnold in. I think his expected data again, so his creativity, his goal threat, etc., was really high. Yes, he went through stages of the season where he didn't look great. The end of the season, he looked brilliant. The thing is, you can't predict when that's going to happen. You can't just turn around and say, well, Trent doesn't start well, he plays really well at the end of the season. It could be the opposite this year. All you really need to go on is, what do we know he can do? He can be brilliant. What are his fixtures? They're also brilliant. So for me, Salah and Trent are locked into my team. The biggest question is, which other player do you go for? Or the second question is, can Mane fit in instead of Salah? Could you have Robertson instead of Trent? For me, when you've got a team like Liverpool and the fixtures like this, you just buy the best options. So that is why I would always spend the extra 0.5 over Robertson. yes, over a span of kind of 6 game weeks, 8 game weeks, 10 game weeks, whatever it might be, Robertson absolutely could outscore Trent. He could have a tremendous start to the season, be flying down that left wing, loads of goal threat, loads of shots, etc. And he might outscore Trent. But the thing is, you don't know that right now. So why would you pick the option who is worse? Unless you really need to save that 0.5. So for me, that's not a discussion. In Salah Mane, the saving is just not enough. I think Mane would have to be at least $1 million cheaper to warrant even a conversation about going without Salah. So Salah's in, Salah and Trent. The next best one for me is Mane or Robertson, probably, right? And the only reason I say that, and I don't include Jota, is because of minutes. Minutes are important, and we just don't know how many Jota is going to get over these 6 weeks, right? He will be rotated out. Yes, of course, if he plays and starts, and they don't start with all 4 attackers on the pitch at once, so I'm talking Firmino, Salah, Mane, Jota, then of course someone else might miss out, but it's very rare for someone like Salah to not get games. So if Firmino is back late, if he's not available for the start of the season, then yes, maybe Jota is an option, but you know Robertson's going to start week in, week out. So for the start of the season, I really like him. The biggest problem with Mane is his price. You can get like a De Bruyne or a Fernandes, etc. for the same price, and not really, I wouldn't say spread your risk, because I think Mane can do really well in these fixtures, but you can get another third Liverpool player without spending the money on Mane, and then use that to also go for a player from another team, like a Fernandes, for example. So I think it is difficult to warrant Mane in our teams. But if you're someone that wants to go a bit different, I don't see why not. I don't see why Mane is a bad option. Yes, he went through large chunks last season where it didn't look like he could finish, but he's still getting in the right positions. That expected data, 0.59, is extremely good. And by the way, Salah's is only so high because that includes penalties. So you take that out, and he's probably around the same as Mane, maybe even slightly lower. So from open play, Mane is brilliant. So I wouldn't begrudge you going there. Right now, I think Salah, Trent, and Robertson's the one. But if I get any inclination that Jota could get a good few starts in this first 6, you look at his stats there. When he's on the pitch per 90 minutes, he's as good as Mane. The problem is he doesn't always get the same amount of minutes as Mane, and that is the big key question. If you think he's going to start maybe 4 or 5 of these games, you could take a punt on him because his price is a lot cheaper, right? If you don't think he's going to get that many starts, I think you just got to go for Robertson. But Salah and Trent, for me, are about as essential as it gets without using the literal meaning of essential. Okay, so Brighton up next. A lot of talk about them so far this season from me, other content creators on Twitter, etc. Because again, the fixtures are super good, right? Burnley just weren't great last year. Like, I see some people say they're going to revert to type this year and like go back to being defensive, and maybe they will, but maybe they just weren't very good last year, and maybe that's going to be the same this year. Like right now, again, all we can go on is what happened last year and whether any new signings or new managers come in that might really shift things around. We don't really have that for Burnley last year. So I'm seeing that as a really good fixture. And then any time a promoter comes up, that to me is a great fixture. So Watford, Brentford in there as well. And obviously Palace have got a new manager now, and they were awful last year. So 4 out of 6, very good fixtures for Brighton. Defensively, like you've heard me talk about their defensive data in the past, right? Their expected goals conceded was extremely good last year, right? We're talking one of the best teams in the league. Now, yes, it didn't translate into clean sheet points. And yes, I too am probably a little bit skeptical about whether they can do that. Can they turn that data into the amount of clean sheets that like a Chelsea or a Man City would get? I think that's difficult to do. All right, so I'm not saying they are as good as them, but I am saying they're probably better than most of us predict. Will they still finish 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th? Possibly, but again, I'm just going by what the data says. Ben White is obviously leaving for Arsenal. That is potentially a problem, but I do think this is one of those teams where there is a system in place that the manager believes in, the players are all bought into, they all know how it plays. I don't think necessarily taking Ben White out is going to completely decimate their team at all, like their defence. Like, he's a great defender, but I just think what Potter has built there with the system, etc., will be good enough to manage that. So I still think, because of the fixtures, right, and because of the data, everyone wants one of their players. Sanchez, I've not included on here just because he's a goalie, right? It's boring to talk about goalkeepers, but he's great. The big discussion comes around Lamptey versus Dunk. Is Dunk worth the extra 0.5 million? Now, with Lamptey, he had a lot of injury concerns last year. Just because he did last year does not mean he necessarily has them again this year. But I think it's okay to question whether he can come back and play like he has done in the past, right? It was hamstring issues he kept having, that he was brought off early, then he came back, then he was brought off early, then he was just gone for the rest of the season. Will he be a bit more aware of that now? We've seen players in the past get similar injuries, and maybe they don't sprint quite as fast. They're always slightly worried about it. Has Lamptey got that? I mean, he's very young, so perhaps that's not in his mind yet. But we need to see whether he's fit and available for Game Week 1. If he is, his expected data is better than Lewis Dunk. But, right, most of Lamptey's expected data comes from expected assists, which are worth half as much to a defender, right? Everybody gets 3 points for an assist, whether you're a defender, midfielder, goalkeeper, forward. With goals, you get 6 as a defender. So if Lewis Dunk scores half as many goals as Lamptey gets assists, they still get the same points. The only thing I would say is, I guess for a defender, especially if you're keeping a clean sheet, if you also chip in with an assist and it's not like a really high scoring game, like a 5-6-0, which I wouldn't expect too much for Brighton, then the chance of getting bonus points are heightened. So potentially double the assist could also work out better with bonus. Obviously, if you score a goal half as many times as the assist, you've got half as many chances to get bonus points, if that makes sense. But Lewis Dunk does have pretty good goal threat, and he just doesn't really seem to have those injury concerns. He has scored a few own goals, it's worth saying. So potentially, if you really wanted someone absolutely nailed on with no real issues around injuries and stuff like that, then Dunk might be worth it. But if Lamptey's fit and available from the start, for 0.5 less, I think he's much better option. That's just my opinion. In attack, Trossard probably unfairly missed out from my cheap midfielders video that I did yesterday. Obviously, you might not be watching this at the time it's released, but he probably is worth a look at. I think there's lots of players around 6.5 that are just not perfect. Either they don't have the stats, they don't have the fixtures, or whatever it might be, right? Maybe they're not completely nailed. It probably was harsh leaving Trossard out. He's got the fixtures. He's pretty much nailed in that team. His stats are okay for the price. If you're in a position where 9 to 10 of your players are solid, you know they're going to start, you know they're going to be great picks, and you've got a 6.5 million midfielder spot available, whether it's Buendia, Sarr, Harrison, Rafinha, etc., Trossard could be in with a shout if you just want to go a little bit different and maybe move him on later on. So I like him because Brighton's attack is okay. They just haven't necessarily got the striker that's converted the chance in the past. Like, you look at the expected data for Morpay and Welbeck, it's pretty good. They get into good positions. Brighton do create the chances. They just don't put them away enough. I think the fact that Gross is on penalties means he might be worth a look at as well if he continues to play week in, week out. Morpay, if he had penalties, would be much better. But one, he's not that great at them, or he wasn't last year anyway. And two, he does seem to have been taken off them now. What will be really interesting is if Brighton sign a new striker. I don't think they have just yet. I'm looking down the list. Obviously, Connolly's the other one, but he's not nailed down at all. Again, if you've got that spot and you don't want to go for Tony, I don't think there's anything wrong with going for a Brighton midfielder. Obviously, through pre-season, we'll see who gets the most minutes because Welbeck and Morpay both played quite a lot when they were available last year. Will they both play again? We'll have to wait and see. And will they bring someone in? But I think you can see from those stats that Brighton do recruit quite well. They get strikers that get into the right positions, which is what you want. But more importantly, they do create the chances. And sometimes, right, and it sucks in football, you go through those runs where maybe Morpay is an awful finisher, but sometimes you just go through those spells where it just doesn't work out, and the next season it's looking good. So I'm not sitting here saying you have to go for Morpay. He's a great pick. But around 6.5 million, there's not a huge amount of options, okay? We know Tony's nailed. We know for Brentford he's going to take penalties, etc. So he might be worth going for. But if you want to go a bit different, I think Brighton attack could be the way to go. But realistically, for me, it's the defence that I'm really looking at. And right now I'm on Lamptey over Dunk, but I do think there's an argument to go for Dunk. Okay, so next up we've got Man United. So Leeds at home, Southampton away, Wolves away, Newcastle at home, West Ham away, Aston Villa at home, I should say. I've kind of redone the fixture difficulty rating where I've put Southampton green and Leeds grey. Now, this is overall because we're talking about defenders and attackers, right? So it's a little bit different. But I do think Leeds, it just feels a bit harsh to make them green. Even though they were so bad defensively last year, they did show signs to turn it around. I'm not quite sure about what to make of those fixtures. But overall, I think it's quite a good set of fixtures for Man United. I chose Greenwood as the picture without actually putting him on the list, by the way, but we're going to talk about him anyway. Lots of potentially good options. With Sancho, obviously, the data is from the Bundesliga, and I've taken that there just to add it in as a comparison. Obviously, Fernandes, a bit like Salah, is on penalty, so his numbers are a little bit inflated. If you took off the penalties, he'd actually probably be below the likes of Cavani or Sancho, or at least around the same, right? So let's start with Henderson. The rumour is, the word that's coming out from Man United, from journalists, etc., is that Henderson is going to be given the number 1 shirt from the get-go, right? Now, preferably you want to hear that from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's mouth, right? So he says it, and we know for sure. But we'll probably find out as we get closer to game week 1. So there is an argument to go with him if you want to cover Man United's defence for a little bit cheaper. So you can get the likes of Lindelof at 5, but obviously Varane is hopefully probably going to come in. And if he does, he'll almost certainly be 5.5 like Harry Maguire. And obviously Shaw's 5.5, Wan-Bissaka's 5.5 as well. So you can get into the Man United defence for a little bit cheaper with Dean Henderson. Might get you some saves along the way. Generally, I don't like spending more than 4.5 on a goalkeeper if I can help it. But the fact they've reduced the prices of these teams or these team goalkeepers means it is worth a shout. And obviously, you're only going to own this goalkeeper up until your first wildcard anyway. So if it wasn't going well, you could always downgrade to whichever 4.5 ends up being the best one going forward. So I don't think Henderson's completely ruled himself out. And also, with Luke Shaw apparently been playing with, I think it's broken ribs, right? Some broken ribs or a lot of pain in his ribs, whatever it might have been. He might not even be available for game week 1. And if he's not, okay, you got Wan-Bissaka, but he's nowhere near as attacking. Harry Maguire possibly if he's ready for some goal threat from set pieces, but we often see him like miss the chance he gets. Henderson's a good option, but sure, if he's fit, he's definitely the one to go for. His creativity 0.21. I think it was slightly ahead of Robertson, just a little bit behind Trent, which is to be expected. So very creative, going to get you bonus points. Should be a good few clean sheets in this run as well. Shaw is obviously great. Fernandes at 12 million, right? I went out on a, not really out on a limb, right, to say that Salah's essential. I think everyone like pretty much knows that. Is Bruno Fernandes essential? Now, I'm having this conversation in my head. I know what people are going to say. You're definitely going to go with Fernandes. I probably will, right? I probably will because I think the fixtures are good. And he just, whatever stats you look at, he ends up getting points. But to me, when you're 12 million, right, you're not talking about value at that point. Value players are those that are underpriced. Fernandes and Salah, etc., they're not underpriced. They're priced because they're the best players in the game. So they're not value. So to me, to add value, they need to be a captaincy option. Now, I would look at these fixtures without knowing anyone else's fixtures, like any other teams, and I would say Leeds, yeah, could captain him. Southampton could captain him. Wolves, possibly. Let's see how they start under the new manager. Newcastle could captain him. Aston Villa could captain him as well. The thing is, I'm probably not going to captain him in most of those fixtures because Salah also has great fixtures. So Fernandes against Leeds or Liverpool against Norwich, I'm going for Salah. Game week 2, Fernandes against Southampton. Liverpool have got, I can't even remember, Burnley at home. I'll probably go with Liverpool, although there are some good other fixtures like Man City versus Norwich. So maybe De Bruyne is a better option there, whoever starts for Man City, etc. Game week 3, possibly against Wolves, because that's the week that Liverpool play Chelsea. Game week 4, Liverpool play Leeds. So I'd probably go for Salah, maybe over Fernandes versus Newcastle, but it's close. So for me, it comes down to captaincy mostly or him versus other premium assets. So do you want to back Mane for his fixtures over Fernandes? You probably don't with the penalties, to be honest. So I wouldn't say that Fernandes is essential, but I find it difficult not to put him in my team. To be honest, let me know in the comments. I might even do a video around Fernandes and whether he's essential or not, because I think it is a big call. I think depending on Sancho's price, there's potentially an argument to drop Fernandes to Sancho if you're not going to captain Fernandes and you're happy to captain Salah instead, because it would give you more money to upgrade like a 6 million to like an 8 million or a 9 million player, or potentially just get you another captain. Like it's Son, for example, in game week 3 and 4. Maybe you want to captain a Spurs player. Maybe instead of having like Bruno and a 7 million, you could have Sancho and Son. You probably have to get a little bit of money from somewhere else because obviously we don't know Sancho's price at the time of recording. I would guess 9.5 million, but let's wait and see. But I think there is a conversation to be had around that. And for me, it all comes down to captaincy. Forget about value with these players. The value is in whether they're captainable. And obviously, Fernandes has just done it. His stats, pretty good, right? They're mostly around assists rather than goal threat from open play. But he's got penalties. And Man United do generally get an abnormal amount of penalties. That might dry up this season. You can't really predict it. But I wouldn't want to be on the betting side of that when they've got these fixtures as well. I think Cavani's an option for the start of the season at 8.5, because around a lot of these fixtures there won't be Europe yet, there won't be Champions League, etc. There's not too many. I think there's one international break between game week 3 and 4. I believe, so we might have to keep an eye on that. But ultimately, with Greenwood not really seen right now as a centre forward, I would say. I think Solskjaer is basically, I think the long-term goal is for him to be a centre forward, but I'm not sure he's trusted there right now. And obviously, Rashford's got to have surgery, and if it's between Martial or Cavani, you're going to play Cavani. So I think people always put on my comment section, you're sleeping on X player. I probably am sleeping on Cavani a little bit. It's because he's just that little bit extra compared to like a Calvert-Lewin or a Watkins or an Antonio. And with him, you do have those concerns of whether he can keep playing 90 minutes all the time. But with a week rest in between games, he should be good. So I think Sancho can only improve Man United. They're a really good attacking team last year. Not at the levels of Man City, Liverpool, etc. But I think they can possibly get there. Obviously, Varane's a big signing at the back as well. So defensively and attacking-wise, they're looking really good. Right now, I'm unsure. I definitely want Fernandes or Sancho as well. And I think I could be tempted to go for a triplet of Cavani. I think the fixtures are that good. So I know I spent quite a bit of time discussing those three teams, right? So I'm going to put the other three teams that I want to talk about into a bit of a smaller section. But obviously they have got the best fixtures. We're going to be thinking a lot about which players to get from those teams. So it takes a little bit of time to talk about, right? But the other ones are Everton, Villa and Watford. Now there are some other teams that have also got some pretty good fixtures. And because there's a lot of grey fixtures in these, it's hard to determine exactly which ones are the best, but Everton's run's pretty good. Southampton, Leeds and Burnley in there in the first 5, and they've got Villa and Brighton outside of that. I still think Calvert-Lewin's looking great. I got concerns about James Rodriguez, to be completely honest. I think a lot of us were surprised that he went to Everton in the first place. Obviously, no disrespect to Everton, but I think it was a little bit surprising. And obviously, Ancelotti's gone as well now. What's going to happen with him? I don't know if they're going to sell him, to be honest, but will he be as happy? Will he play as well? Possibly. But he's always got injury concerns as well, so I'm not sure about him. In defence, Luca Dean looks good. Obviously, we have to talk about the fact that Benitez is there now, and a lot of people think he's going to make them suddenly much more defensively sound. Everton defence was not good last year at all, right? They were really poor, I would say, compared to what we expected from them. But then the flip side is, how is he going to make them more defensive? Is it going to mean Luca Dean and whoever plays on the right, Coleman, maybe they'll get Dumfries, will they be pinned back a little bit more? And will they then be less attacking, right? If you've got Luca Dean and Dumfries, you want to see them attack, right? But that might not happen as much. So that's a little bit of a concern. But to be honest, for me, the bread and butter of a defender should be the clean sheets. The attacking is a bonus on top of that. So if Luca Dean can get more clean sheets, and we know he's got a wand of a left foot as well, that definitely makes him a better option. So I'm liking the look of him there. Obviously, someone like Keane, etc., is nailed on, a little bit cheaper in the defence. But realistically, I think if you go in Everton defence, you want to try and get to Luca Dean, unless someone like Holgate becomes nailed on at 4.5 million. Then there's a conversation to be had. But midfield-wise, I'm probably skipping. Richarlison might be at the Olympics as well, I believe. So Calvert-Lewin is definitely the one. Calvert-Lewin and Luca Dean. I don't think there's too much to shout out about from the rest of the squad, but let's see who else they sign right now. Aston Villa, right? Last night, before I've recorded this, they've gone and scored 2 goals. No, they've scored more than that, I think. But in a pre-season friendly, Buendia assisted Watkins twice, which is hilarious. It's like, right, I've got to put him straight into my team now, just as a joke, by the way. Maybe they'll stay, I don't know. But they've got such good 3 opening fixtures. And then depending on what you think about that Everton fixture, maybe I'm undervaluing how good they are, those first 5. Because if Everton's not an awful fixture but not a great fixture, it's somewhere in between, then you've got 3 really good fixtures plus 1 okay. That's like, I've nearly put out 5 there, but you know what I'm saying, 3 really good, 1 okay. That's 4 pretty decent fixtures in the first 5. I still don't think the defence is that good at Villa, so I would worry about that, spending the extra money on that. Like, I don't think Martinez is a great option, unless, of course, you're thinking about wildcarding very early, in which case you could put him in and spend that extra for the first 5 fixtures and then maybe think about getting rid. I don't think that's the worst idea if you've got the money to spend. But realistically, I'm looking at attack. I'm looking at Buendia, I'm looking at Grealish, I'm looking at Watkins. I think Watkins, because no matter who comes in, right, I've seen these reports about Leon Bailey I mentioned yesterday, etc. Whoever comes in, Watkins is going to play up front, unless they sign someone like Tammy Abraham, and then it would probably muddy the water a bit. But I just don't think that's happening. I think Watkins is the man. He proved that he can do it in the league last year, so he's definitely going to play. So he's probably my favourite right now. 7.5 million. There's lots of other options you can move to if it doesn't work out for those fixtures, etc. So Watkins is probably my number 1. I think if Grealish stays, it has to be him. I know Buendia is great, But Grealish is the man at Villa. Everything's still going to go through him for the majority. So if he's still there, he looks brilliant. I like Buendia, and I think I probably, again, on my cheap midfielders video, probably underestimated how good the Villa fixtures are, but I still prefer, for his output, probably a goal-scoring midfielder mostly, but we'll see. Defenders I'm not that interested in, even though the fixtures are good. Watkins is the man there, I think. And then Watford, realistically, even with these okay-ish fixtures, depending on what you think about Villa defence and Wolves defence, and I'm not quite sure they're as good as they probably have looked in the past. And then obviously you've got Norwich there as well. And I think after Norwich, that Watford have got a really good fixture as well. So obviously the title of this video is going to be the first 1 to 6, but for this graphic I only had space for the first 5. But after Norwich is Newcastle and Leeds. So the first 7 for Watford are actually pretty good. So I wouldn't, like I said yesterday, like someone like Sarr could be a decent option. I still don't know if I'd be going for a defender. Maybe Foster if he happened to be the number 1 there for this season. He was at the start of last season. But yeah, I think Sarr would be the one. Maybe Josh King for 5.5 million. Maybe if he's absolutely nailed, he could be the one. But they've got so many strikers. Is there going to be rotation there? It's really hard to say. So I don't mind Watford's fixtures that much when it comes to newly promoted sides, but I think Sarr would probably be the one for me. There we go. That is it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please give it a like and keep hitting that subscribe button. There's a lot of you watching the videos that aren't subscribed. If you like the content, there's plenty more to come for the rest of this season and next year and the season after that, etc. So hit that subscribe button if you have not already. And do not forget to check out Fantasy Football Scout. There is loads and loads of great tools over there. I genuinely mean that. I've used the site for a very long time. The stats tables are incredible. There's Rate My Team, Season Ticker. It's all super useful stuff. And the fee, to be fair, compared to what some other people spend on fantasy and mini leagues and stuff, is quite cheap. There's 20% off. You can pay for a year or monthly. Link in the description below. I'll leave it there. Got another video out tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow should be the start of a bit of a new series where I'm going to get some guests on the show, both FPL and outside of the FPL world. I'm really looking forward to it, so make sure to check out that. Otherwise, I will leave it there. Thanks for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.